That's why sometimes I am a little bit miffed with the school system, because it assumes that everybody learns the exact same way, which is, in my opinion, not the case at all. But that's just Ike Spicy's take for the day. Schools depend on memorization. Yeah, pretty much. You learn what you need to, like... You essentially commit a bunch of useless info to your short-term memory, and then regurgitate that info on a test in order to get, like, a passing score. And then all of that knowledge that you retained is just, like, right out the window, because it's not useful to you anymore. And at that point, I just kind of want to ask, what was the point? Did you enjoy school back in the day? It kind of depends, really. There was some things that was fun. Some subjects I thought were a lot of fun. For example, English. I really liked English a lot, because I liked the language, I liked speaking it. A lot of the things that I was interested in was in English. So, video games, movies, YouTube videos, like anything online. English was mainly the spoken language, because it's a very globalized language, for lack of a better term. So it was a lot of fun. Plus, a lot of the assignments were a lot more fun. Instead of, like, having to do research on something and then regurgitate that information on a test, it was usually you were given an assignment. Like, for example, writing a paper about something. For example, I recall this one time when we were asked to write about our favorite bands or our favorite musical artists. So because we were given a lot of freedom with that, I was able to just write something, write about something that I was actually passionate about. I just had to do it in English. Because of that, it was super easy for me to put something together. I was motivated, and usually in the school that I was in, whenever we did one of these things, we would usually have, like, presentations where we did, where we read everything out loud. More often than not, when people did this, they had, like, a PowerPoint presentation, and they held their paper in their hand and just read the whole thing, like, straight up, like, while looking at the paper. What I did, I sort of broke away from the norm, and I memorized my entire paper, because I actually was that passionate about it. And when I walked up in front of the class, I had my paper in my hand, and it looked like I was about to read everything in front of everybody, like everybody else. And then I just put my paper down on the table and said, I don't really need this. And I recited everything from mine. I was keeping eye contact with the class. I was talking to them. I was motioning towards the PowerPoint that I prepared. And when I was done with everything just kind of stopped, and everybody just looked at me and was like, Ike? Like, what was that? And I remember there was this one girl in my class that I didn't talk to a lot. We weren't really friends. We were, like, we knew of each other. We knew each other's names. Like, that was about it. But I remember that she specifically looked at our English teacher and just said, if that doesn't get an A, I don't know what does. So the fact that somebody that wasn't even my friend said that just made me a little bit big-headed. It made me feel really good about myself. This was a special instance, though. Not all assignments were like that. It was because it was something I really cared about. Sasuga Smart Cookie. Hey, English was easily my best subject. I got the highest possible grade in it. At least before high school. I was just happy to talk about music in English. What about other subjects? Oh, I was garbo in the majority of other subjects. Math, for example, hated it. Hated math. Hated it a lot. Because one thing that I hated was whenever we had to do our problems, we always had to show our thought process, or we wouldn't get, like, a passing grade. But I hated doing that because I thought it was slow, and more often than not, I didn't know how to do it. I did a lot of the problems that people did, like, they showed their process of thinking. I did all of that in my head because it was faster and easier for me. So whenever I did that, I got a failing grade for that. Even though I showed the teacher that I wasn't, like, cheating or anything, that I was actually doing everything in my head, they just said, well, Ike, this is how we're grading things. We can't really do anything about it. WTF, rude. I don't think that my like, middle school math teacher was actually pretty cool. It was we had the same teacher in math as we did in English, and they were really, really cool. I had nothing against them whatsoever. There were quite a few teachers that I didn't get along with or that I didn't like for a variety of reasons. But I feel like my most despised teachers were from high school because they didn't really look... Because the majority of teachers, at least in Swedish education, they don't really view themselves as above you. For example, we don't call teachers like Miss or Mrs. or refer to them by their last names. We call teachers by their first name and just talk to them like we would anybody else. There's no sort of hierarchy, which I think is pretty cool. But some teachers think that they know better than everybody else, which is a little bit unfortunate. Because there was this one English teacher that I had in high school that gave me a failing grade in English. Me having English as a second language, and I like to think with how proficient I am in English, giving me an F in English doesn't really feel right, does it? Especially high school level English. Especially because they gave you an F? Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And the reason for that, like, we had a bunch of, like, tests and assignment, and I never got lower than a B. Everything else I got, like, either an A, a B, or something along those lines. But there was at least one assignment that I turned in 2 days too late. And because of that, they failed me in the entire course. And I just thought, there's no way that this is like the standard procedure over here. So I thought that was absolutely ridiculous. I even asked some friends who went to different high schools, some which were way, way, way more prestigious than the one I went to. And I just said, is this like the norm for people? Like, and they just said, no, I had this one course where I didn't even turn in 3 of my assignments, but the stuff that I turned in was still enough for to get me the lowest passing grade. Like, sure, it was the lowest, but they still passed. So I actually confronted my English teacher about that and just said, like, I don't think that this is fair. Like, I've spoken to multiple other people and they just think that this is ridiculous, and they go to way more prestigious school than this. Are you meaning to tell me that of every single like all the different schools I've talked to, when people who go to those places, are you telling me that every single school at these prestigious schools are doing things wrong, and you in this other, like, completely mediocre school is the only person doing things right by failing me in the entire course for not turning in one assignment on time? They looked me dead in the eye and said, yes, I'm the only one who is doing things correctly. At that point, I just stood up and walked out the room because I knew there was no point in trying to reason with them. So, needless to say, I wasn't a big fan of that teacher. Especially since that my middle school English teacher literally... okay, I sound like I have a big head here, but I genuinely think that I'm pretty good at English. They kept, like, touting how good I was at English, how good I was at speaking, how good my assignments were. There was even one assignment that they asked me if I could give them, like, the files for it so that they could show it to other students that was taking the same course, as an example of, like, a really, really good execution of that particular assignment. I never gave it to them because I was embarrassed. But, like, the fact that I went from a teacher being that, praising of my abilities to an F within a single year just doesn't sit right. It doesn't feel right. Your English is better than mine? I don't know about that. There's still a lot of things. You can still tell that English is not my native language. Too much of a giga chat for them to handle. I don't know, like, they were the ones that gave me, like, passing grade, like really, really high grades and everything else that I turned in. So why they thought that one missed assignment was worthy of getting me, like, an F in overall English was BS, in my opinion. It isn't your native language? Nope. Not really. You sound like a native? Well, thank you. That's very, very flattering. But I think that there's a big distinction to make between native and fluent. I am fluent in English. I am not native level because I don't even know if it's possible to attain native level if it isn't, like, the language you grew up speaking. Even if you've spoken nothing but English for the past 10 years, I don't know if you can still, like, consider that native. Fluent, yes. Native, I don't know. There's something about native level that just feels unattainable because there's so many subtle nuances that you have to try so freaking hard to capture, and you can still miss out on occasionally. Ike sounds like a distinguished gentleman. PP and poo-poo. Do I still sound like a distinguished gentleman to you?
やる気が出ない、やる気が出ない、布団から出られない。